Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please thumb up the video, leave a comment about any of the games I discuss, consider subscribing, and if you really want to go the next mile, consider checking out the Patreon campaign to help the channel that little bit more. Okay, slight change of format you will notice here. I mean, I've got it still sort of pointing at the table, but mainly a bit more direct. I just wanted to kind of experiment with different angles with this thing, because having it all the way up there kind of distances me. You're getting a lot of wasted space of my window and stuff like that, and it's kind of like, do you really need it? So I figured, you know, if I sit about here, about a third of the way into the shot, you still tilt the camera down so you can see the immediate area of components, but also just have some spare space here that I can, you know, put up pictures and images there without completely overshadowing my face in that. So I don't know, let me know your thoughts and see what it works. But I got 3 big games to talk about here in terms of popularity. I have got Libertalia, the new Stonemaier reprint of the old 2012 game, I believe. I've got Bad Company from A Porter Games. That's definitely been getting a lot of buzz amongst critiquers, but not necessarily much in the public domain. And of course, yes, finally, thanks to a guy who watches the show, you know, I'm able to get a second-hand copy of this and play it, give it the beans, and finally review it. So I know a lot of you have been egging me on like crazy to play this, and finally I now have. But we're not going to talk about that first, we're going to talk about a different one. So let's move on, I think, to Bad Company. So Porter Games don't tend to get a huge amount of buzz with a lot of their games. There's some really good underrated titles that they do. For example, Automania still sits on my shelf, and I still think it's a really solid game and one worth considering. So when I saw that this was getting some good bunch reviewers, I thought, oh yeah, I might want to check this out, but I've barely heard anybody in the public domain talk about it, like no consumer knowledge of it. So a bit late to the party. I think this was a 2021 release, but I thought, well, come on, I want to try this one, see if I can get another little hidden gem. This is essentially a bit like Maichikoro and Space Base. It's basically one of those roll a die, trigger various characters, get a resource for doing it, and you know, this will happen on not only your turn but on other players' turns. But the crux of this is that you're basically pulling off heists, although to be honest the theme in this is there, but it's pretty light. You're basically trying to roll your different characters on your board so that you can complete these heist cards, which are basically just a case of, right, this needs 2 gloves, 2 locks, and a torch, and you're just trying to get enough rolls of the dice in order to cover up the symbols, and there you go. So pretty generic theme-wise, but I mean, it is, you know, it does represent it in the artwork. But you essentially have a board that is comprised of 2 strips like this, a left and the right hand side. It gives you some stupid name, like this one's called the Lucky Hood, is apparently this gang, with characters numbered from 2 to 12. 2 and 12 are the same, the rest are all very generic, basic get a resource, get a driving point, that kind of thing. But what happens is that each round somebody gets to roll 4 dice, and they make 2 pairs of numbers with those dice, and those are the 2 characters they activate. The opponents have to activate one of the 2 characters that one activates. So you can see everybody else's board and kind of go, well, you know, I want to activate this one, but then 8's really powerful for you, 8's really powerful for you, could I maybe upgrade something else? And there is a little bit of interaction on that front. And then once you've activated your characters and collected your tokens for it, well, you don't actually collect tokens, you essentially use these check markers in order to cover up the heist cards. But once you've done that, everybody simultaneously can decide, right, if I completed the heist card, do I want to upgrade my character? You can essentially draw from a deck of cards after paying some money, and these just basically have alternate versions of the characters on your board, numbered from 3 to 11, except that they've got more symbols. So you basically stack them on top of each other and they generate more. Kind of like a more simplistic Space Base, because Space Base had that, but it also had a few little weird things in it, like, you know, you could put cubes of a card and convert it to this, or this allowed you to swap 2 cards with each other. This is more simple than that. It basically is just a case of, right, well, how many symbols does this card give me? As well as the symbols for the heist, you also have a police die, because essentially on this board, which is probably one of my sort of favourite aspects of this actually, you've got a track here where the characters basically drive around this track. There's an end game condition at the end, but the police car is also on this track, and it's following you around based on the value of the police die, and you have to roll a particular, like, a steering wheel resource in order to, like, drive through the track and get bonuses. But it's a cool thing. I mean, I just, you can't help but just go like, making stupid noises like that as you're driving this police car around.
Did you see anything? No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good!
The game itself is pretty straightforward. The rules are dirt simple. I mean, I was worried that it was going to have, like, too many fiddly aspects and that, and no, the rules are bright day and night simplistic here. There is, like, very little grounds for an FAQ. Rolling the dice, choose the pairs. You can re-roll if you spend cash, activate 2 characters, get the symbols, put some check marks on the cards, resolve the card when it comes off. The only thing that's a little bit fiddly is that you've got these necklaces that you can get for your characters, and essentially when you complete the heist, they've got symbols like gold and diamonds and things like that on them. And so what essentially tends to happen is you complete the heist cards and you see who's got the most of that particular symbol. They get the necklace, it gives them a VP, and then you put it on the character, like extra bling, and when that character activates, you get more points. It's fine, it's kind of like a tug-of-war thing with these necklaces, there's only 4 of them, but I don't know, that's a little bit of a fiddly aspect. I don't think they desperately needed to include that in the game. I'd have been just happy if you just made some more funky, like, upgrade cards. You get some loot cards as well that just give you special bonuses every now and again. They're nice and simplistic, but yeah, really the game has got very little room for error. It's just 30 minutes though, as the box suggests. The box says 1 to 6 players, of which playing this solo is meh. I wouldn't really want to play this solo, but 30 minutes just isn't possible with this game. I'm sorry. I suppose if you went really fast solo, you could do it in 30 minutes. But no, you're talking at least a 60-minute game here for most of the other player counts, regardless. Possibly even going up to 90 if you've got maximum player count and some of these are a little bit slow. Yes, you can do a lot of the phases simultaneously, but you still got to wait for 6 people to finish those phases. It can take a while, especially if somebody's got, I know, I need to draw a bunch of upgrade cards and choose this. All right, and now I'm also going to, like, complete this heist, which means I've got this. Who's got the most gold? Oh, it's you. Let me take that necklace. It does drag out a little bit. Now, the whole simultaneous phase thing is a bit of a double-edged sword, though, because yes, it does speed up the game, but you also have to trust that everybody knows what they're doing. You can play the first round out, say, in turn-based order and just get everyone used to it, but after that point, you haven't got time to, like, the mental capacity to look at everybody else's board. You've just got to go with it. And so you end up trusting the fact that people have got the right symbols or done the right character or done... And I know I'm not saying everybody cheats at these games, but still, there is an element of trust here that you don't necessarily have to contend with much in maybe some of the other ones. But the game itself is just fine, really. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking. I think it's had quite a lot of, like, really high buzz. I wouldn't quite go as far as that, but I would play this over Magic Horror any day. Magic Horror is a dud for me. It's too unbalanced, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Magic Horror at all. Now, I do like space-based, but I'm kind of not a fan of it in its base game form. People have told me of some various variants like Lightspeed and the Pluto expansion and stuff like that that says when you play space-based with all that stuff thrown in, it's fantastic. I really want to play space-based with that stuff included because it sounds like it fixes some of the problems I have. But if I was just to compare this to space-based base, that sounds weird, then I would play this any day, really. I think it's got a theme that I think people can gravitate towards too more. I mean, the whole gangster, heist, mafia thing. I mean, you can come up with movie references, you can make your own jokes here. You can't do that with space-based. They're all just generic ships. There's only so much you can do. But here you've got like weird, funky, wacky characters on these boards. You've got your stupid name. You've got the police board, which generates its own fair share of laughs as people are trying to keep up with the police car or somebody's veering off into the distance. And there's a lot of good fun that you can have with this. The artwork is fine. The aesthetics are pretty basic. I mean, it's just cardboard coins, some relatively basic cards, and a few wooden pieces here and there. I mean, this is not exactly going to win an aesthetics award anytime soon, and it's got that kind of similar cartoony look to what Automania has, actually. So if you're not a fan of Automania's artwork, this one might put you off a bit more, but it is trying to be light. But overall, I enjoy it. I think this is one I'm going to hang on to for a little bit. I don't think I would want to play this with 5 or 6 players though. I think that's probably just a little bit too long for not being the active player and for like all the phases to go out. I don't think this is much fun as a solo mode. You'll get some benefit out of it. You're basically just like throwing a die and seeing how you get on. It's like, that's not that interesting really. I'd much rather play this, say, as a 3-4 player game, something that could be nice and quick, not quite filler length. I mean, 30 minutes is just not going to happen in a multiplayer game, but I need something light, an opening game to the night, or even an ending game to the night really. Bad Company will do a good job. So, as I say, I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's good. I think it's worth a look, and I feel it's going to go under the radar a little bit, and honestly, I reckon you should give it a look if you're into that kind of space-based style game. So I'd give this one a 7 out of 10. It's pretty solid. I'll hang on to this one for now. 7 out of 10s in my collection are a little bit hit and miss as to whether they stick around, but this does fill a niche that I don't quite have. I mean, yes, I've got Catan on my shelf still for the whole roll dice and get resources thing, but, you know, I don't have a space base, I don't have a Magikoro type-ish game on my shelf. This one might be able to fill the void for a bit. If not, I'd probably donate it to my game cafe, actually, because it'd be cool if they had it, because I think this could work for a game cafe setting. But yeah, 7 out of 10, Bad Company from A-Porter Games, worth a look. Little quick note, if you hear me like clearing my throat every now and again, yes, I was with COVID. I've now tested negative. I've all recovered, so thank you for everyone who's helped me, wished me well through that. But that's not to say that there aren't some remnants left behind. But yeah, I'm 100% fine, other than just maybe having to clear my throat every now and again. But this is now Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, which you will forget within about 5 seconds of me mentioning it, because it really doesn't matter. This is the reprint of the original Libertalia that came out, I think, around 2012 time. I might be right or wrong on that. I don't know. I'll correct myself if not. But essentially, it was a pirate-themed game where you had a bunch of characters, about 30 or so, all different cards, all different abilities ranked from 1 to 30, and what happened is that you were basically going on voyages to try and get loot tokens. So you've got all these different types of loot that you can get, which are represented in this game by these opal fruits, effectively, as they get called. This is basically the starburst bag, I call it. And these different loot tokens will get you different amounts of money or let you perform some ability. One of them, the Cursed Relic, is actually slightly bad. You don't want this one. But what you do is that on a board, you are essentially placing them out simultaneously. The cards, in fact, they're placed on a row such as this. And the idea is that everybody simultaneously chooses a card and puts it face down. They are then revealed, and then they're put in rank order, ascending order of the number. You then go through a day, dusk, and night phase where in ascending order you resolve their abilities, in descending order you take the loot tokens, and then any nighttime abilities go off, and any anchor abilities as they're represented on the cards are essentially end of voyage scoring. So it's kind of like day, dusk, night, day, dusk, night, day, dusk, night, and then eventually anchor. You know, it's kind of how it works. But the characters, you might think, well, how the hell do I choose them with 30 characters? You don't. Start of the game, 6 of them out of the deck are taken at random, and these are the 6 that everybody has. When you go through the first voyage, you're only using those 6 characters, potentially. But then in the second voyage, another 6 characters are chosen at random. Everybody takes those out of their decks, combines it with some characters they might still have left over from the previous voyage, and they carry on with that set of characters. And then for the final voyage, again, you do the same. Another 6 characters, combine it with what you've left behind, and so on and so forth. So as you go through the game, everybody's set of characters is slightly different from other people's, and you might have to kind of gauge whether or not they've kept them or not, because it's not entirely public information. Here though, you've got 40 characters, not 30, so there's quite a bit of variety in there, although we'll get to that a little bit later. So in terms of comparing this to the original Libertalia, it is 90% the same game. If you liked one, you're going to like the other. If you didn't like one, you're not going to like the other. I don't think there's enough change in them to say, oh yeah, this is different. But I used to own the original Libertalia, and I kind of burnt out on it after a while. I thought it was fine, but I thought it was too chaotic at 5-6 players. I thought that it wasn't like the most fun experience ever, because it is kind of like a bit of a luck of the draw in a sense. You can kind of try to psych out what your opponents might put down, but there are times when it is a bit of a lottery. And I felt the game kind of dragged on a little bit longer than it needed to. Now, the good thing about this is that this is a very well-produced game, okay? This has got, really cool dials for your loot chests. It's got, special cubby for your coins, which sadly are cardboard, but, I'd say they're half-decent cardboard. The different loot token abilities that you have, there's a lot of them, and they're all decent tiles. But on top of that, you've got, as I say, a giant bag of opal fruit bake-like tile pieces, which, haha, they're not quite seasons nice worthy of chucking around like a schoolgirl, but oh my god, do I love bake-like pieces. This stuff that I see in games like Yinch, like the Gift series and Azul and stuff like that. I love this material when it's used for components. They are so good. These are fantastic. The card quality is not too bad either. It's a little bit on the flimsy side, but it's not going to tear in your hand. I just might recommend sleeving these if you are going to hang on to the game. But here's one thing I'm a little bit ho hum on. The original game I thought looked brilliant. It had this very gritty, dark, like Pirates of the Caribbean-esque style artwork. It really looked like a proper gritty pirate theme. This has decided to forego that and bring in this ultra generic sky pirate thing where all the characters are essentially anthropomorphic animals, which, for crying out loud, can we get off this craze with anthropomorphic animals? We've seen this done to death. A little bit of change. But there's even a couple of characters here who don't look animalistic. I mean, the barkeep, the 8 lady, I actually double take to actually check. Wait a minute, that's a girl. That's a girl. Oh wait, she's got pig ears. That's like the only way you can tell she's even animal-like.
Dog, pig, dog, pig, dog, pig, pig, dog, loaf of bread, system error.
The rest of them are a bit more obvious, but why? It just, the whole Winds of Galecrest thing, I mean, nobody cares about the lore here. You know, the artwork's a little bit more on the cartoony side. Kind of gives me actually a kind of feeling of Ryan Lockett stuff, but kind of like a discount Ryan Lockett. But that's not to say the artwork is bad. I think the artwork in this is really good and really beautiful. But I don't think it fits with this. It's a styling issue. The original Libertalia styling I thought was perfect. You had a great player board that helped with everything you were doing. The artwork was fantastic. It looked dark and gritty. I just think it suited the idea that you're pilfering loot from other players, right? This feels like every generic fantasy theme that's been thrown together with pirates in it. The fact that this is supposedly sky pirates is not even remotely represented in this game. You've got a bit of an illustration on the board that shows a few floating islands, but other than that, the whole sky pirate thing is non-existent. So you don't get that feeling of being a pirate in this game. I just feel like, you know, as colourful and that as the artwork is, I just feel like this should have been the artwork for a different game and doesn't quite work here. And certainly I'm not alone on this. You know, it's quite divisive what people think of the artwork in this, but whereas I don't think the artwork is bad, I just don't think it's suited to this game. The other problem I have with this is that it doesn't fix enough of the issues I had with the original. It does fix one or two though. We'll start with the good stuff. There is a reputation track on this board. Originally, the tiebreaker rule was the stupid system where your cards had a number on them, and if you tied with another player, you looked at the number and the highest won. It was completely random. It was not, you know, nothing you could predict. You know, the fact that you had a 3 on your card, it's like, well, do I know he's got a 4? I don't know. I'm just completely randomly guessing. That sucked, right? Here, you now have a reputation track where your markers sit on it and everybody sort of leapfrogs each other. You get a little bit of extra cash if you're on low rep compared to high, but basically this is your tiebreaker. It is visual information that you have in front of you that you can see at any time. Brilliant, much prefer this track. It's so much better. The abilities that you have for the loot tokens that are on the bottom, I like the fact they're also interchangeable. You know, you've got the day side, you've also got a night side of this board, or stormy side I think it's called, but you can also use the tiles as I mentioned here to chop and change what they are. And that's cool, it adds a bit of variety to the game, and certainly this game does have a lot of variety in it. I mean, you've got all the different loot tokens, you've got all the different effects that you can chop and change, and you have 40 characters, not 30, of which you're seeing more of them I think in this game than you are in the previous one. It's quite a decent amount of variety, and I can't, you know, scoff at that at all. But some of the issues still are apparent. The fact that the choices that you make in this game are there, but you frequently end up in a situation where you think, alright, I could play this character, I could play this character, I could play this character. But it comes down to basically dumb choice, right choice. You find that sometimes it's like, you should play this character. There's no reason you should not play this character. So I don't feel I'm making a meaningful choice there. I feel like the game has just kind of gone on this linear path. And I come across that quite a lot when I'm playing this. The other problem, and this is probably the biggie that I have, is that it doesn't fix the 5-6 player issue at all. Some people like it at 5-6 players, and I'm totally down with that. If you like it at 5 and 6, fine. But honestly, I just think it's too chaotic. With 3 or 4 players, I've had fun with this, being able to sort of gauge what other players are going to play down, sussing out what 1 or 2 are doing and maybe getting one wrong, you know, being surprised. In a 5 or 6 player game though, you might as well just, I have done this. I've done this before. You might as well shuffle your character cards and deal one out at random. And I kid you not, I came 3rd out of 6 players in a game where I did exactly that. I just shuffled my characters and dealt them out random, and I came 3rd.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Yes, I didn't win, but I beat 3 other players completely random. It just feels like a slot machine. You chuck the character out, but you cannot predict what 5 other players are going to do, 4 or 5 other players. It's too much. So you don't feel like you've made a great play, you just feel like you got lucky. And it turns the game more into a push your luck game than it does a tactical card playing game. So I would cap this at 4 players. 2 works fine. It's got a little weird like mini board where you've got like a built-in character to use. Honestly, this isn't the sort of game I would play with 2, honestly. I just don't think it's one I would recommend. So I'm kind of stuck with 3, 4, and Solo. Solo's pretty good in this though. It's another Automna Factory game, and props where it's due, the Automna is pretty cool. You essentially have a deck where, well, I say pretty cool, there are some flaws. You essentially have a neutral player with their own cards, and you do the same thing, choose 6 characters, get them out, and you do it for the Automna as well and lay them out. But there's also another side to the card, the Pilferer, which acts as this basically kind of like a 3rd neutral player that just comes in and nicks a loot token. But the Pilferer could have anything between like 1 and 40, whereas at least the other main Automna is on the same character list as you. The idea being that based on what loot tokens are there, the back of the cards tell you a priority order as to which card from the Automna's display you use. It goes into the middle after you've already selected your cards, and so, you know, and then you lay them out and you resolve the abilities as normal. It's not a complicated Automna to use. There's actually a really good player aid card that you can use, which not only repeats what everything means on the back of these cards, but also tells you the iconography, and also very, very welcome, gives you the loot priority list, i.e. which tokens do they gun for first. This card is really, really good. But honestly, yeah, it's a little bit long for a solo maybe. You're still going to be playing this for a good 60 minutes, 60 or 90 minutes I think to get through the entire game, you know, trying to control this and the Automna and make your own decisions. But it's a pretty solid solo mode. I mean, when I heard this was going to have a solo mode, I rolled my eyes a little bit because I thought, hey, seriously? How can you play this solo? But colour me surprised. It's actually a solo mode that works, and I gotta say, I would much rather play it solo than 5 or 6 players, honestly. The Pilferer, I think, is a little bit of a miss in this one. I don't like the idea that this thing can literally just come out of nowhere and screw up your day by pure fluke. It's meant to simulate that 3rd player that you don't know or you couldn't suss out what they were doing, which is fine, I guess. I don't know, I just wish it wasn't quite like so random in itself, but it's a minor niggle. But overall, I still find that this game is, it's fine, it's okay, but it never blows my mind. It never like goes, oh yeah, I really want to play this game again. I play it, I get a few choices that I find obvious. There's a few plays that are like, oh yeah, you know, luck of the draw. 5 and 6 still feels like a lottery. I don't feel like playing this as a solo game that much, even though I do think the solo mode is really good. I think just the general feel of the game doesn't blow me away. And it doesn't help the fact that the styling is, you know, the wrong styling. Keep the old style, gritty, use this component quality with this much variety and you would have had like the perfect Libertalia. But as I say, for every problem it fixes, it either doesn't fix another one or it creates a slightly different one. And it still is a decent game, but just not one that I'm like overly interested in. It's definitely hard to rank this one. I can recommend it to some people. I think there's some that are going to enjoy it. I still don't agree that 5 and 6 players is worth it with this game. Yes, you can play it with 5 or 6, but the game's going to take a while. I mean, was it quote on the box? 45 to 60 minutes? Good luck with that. 60 minutes with a 5 or 6 player game is not going to happen. In fact, to be honest, I don't think I've had a 4-player game take 60 minutes. In fact, I think a 3-player game I play take longer than 60 minutes. You know, that is a very optimistic time length, if I may say so. But, you know, Looks very good, just not the right style. Beautifully produced, great insert, great bakelite tiles and all that. It's a decent effort. I don't know what to rank it really. I think overall for me this is a 6 out of 10. I think it's good. I think it's above average. I think it's fine but nothing great. But player scaling wise, I would say that you could bump this up to a 7 out of 10 if you're playing it with 3 or 4 players, maybe the solo mode, but it drops down quite heavily if I play this at 5 or 6 though. So I'm kind of averaging out at a 6 out of 10. A high 6 out of 10. I can't quite go to 7, but as I say, still decent game, just not one that I was kind of hoping that this might be the Libertalia that I hang on to and go, right, this is the one I'm going to stick in my collection and keep, but I'm kind of done with it. I've played it a bunch of times, I've played the solo a bunch of times, and I'm kind of done really. You know, I've had my fair share and I can go, oh, that was cool, and I'm ready to move on. Okay, I hope you're enjoying the video, and I'm sorry to break it up, but if I could just borrow a minute of your time. We all like a fully stocked shelf like this for the games, right? And if we see an empty shelf, it affects us in different ways. Okay, some more over the top than the others, but you don't have to get into that situation. That's because the new sponsor for this channel is KIENDA.co.uk. They've got the new hotness, some hidden gems, and even stock sleeve kings, which you would have heard me talk about a lot on my videos. They do discounts for really bold purchases, as well as free next day shipping if you spend £30 or more. And I'm going to give you the viewers a little bit of a nudge too. If you sign up for an account with their website and use the referral code to the side here, or the link in the description below, you'll be able to get a 5% discount on your first purchase over £60. So that's 5% off and free next day delivery on your first purchase of £60 or more across their website range. So don't fall into the trap of empty spaces, grab some games, save some money, and be proud of a fully stocked shelf. Thank you for listening, I really appreciate it, and now back to the content.
Get on with it.
Hadrian's Wall! God, how many people have been asking me to play this game?
Do it! Do it, do it, do it!
Seriously, every time I talk about solo games, the solo top 10s I did with Mark Dainty, I don't know if any of us mentioned Hadrian's Wall. I can't remember if Mark did on the Euro side. Maybe I'd have to double check, but I certainly hadn't mentioned it because I've never wanted to play it. Well, never wanted to. I wanted to play it, but just wasn't compelled to, for several reasons. This is a £50 game for a verb and write, as I'm going to call it. You know, roll and write game, verb and write game, whatever you want to call it. But basically a bunch of notepads with a pencil and some stuff you do with them. £50 for something like that? That is expensive. That is twice the price of pretty much every other roll and write in existence. Maybe even 3 times the price. But is it 2, 3 times the fun? We'll see. But basically I was able to get the second hand. So I was not prepared to pay £50 for this, I'm sorry, not out of my own cash. Got it for about £30 on a second-hand sale, and literally it had barely been played, so it's as new as it's going to get. So I thought, you know what, £30 is quite reasonable. Yes, it does give you some like wooden components and that, but I figured this was worth it. Now, it's pretty jam-packed in there, as you can see from the box. However, let me just put this into context here, right? There are 2 little boards that you need for your starting player board. So, you know, these 2 you put together. So here's mine, and here's everybody else's. Damn! Yeah, does the phrase multiplayer solitaire need a new dictionary definition? Because this game is it. 1 to 6 players.
Yeah, in your bra.
This is no way. Why would you play this with more than 1 player? There is literally, I kid you not, 2 tiny aspects for a multiplayer person to be in the game. There is a trade mechanic, which isn't actual trading. It's basically, right, what's on the card they have in front of them? Is it a particular numbered good? Fine, I can acquire that from them this round if I give them a resource. Okay, and then the other bit, I believe, is if for a scout, you've got this kind of little Baron Part Polyomino little mini game here. And, you know, when you scout, you can choose a shape from a neighbor's card and that. That's literally all the multiplayer interaction you have.
Whippy!
Indeed, yeah. 1 to 6 players, no. This is a solo-only game, and honestly, 99% of people who have this game agree with me on this fact. That being said, you do get a bunch of wooden meeples, similar to a lot of Garpill's other stuff in the box, which, like I say, it's trying to justify that £50 price tag. But, you know, in fact, why am I showing you in bags? Let me actually get some of the meeples out. So, yeah, you know, the same kind of meeples that you see in things like Architects of the West Kingdom and that, and Raiders of the North Sea. They're here and they're good quality. But for the most part, you are basically just going, I get this meeple and then I cash it in for this, and then I get this meeple and I cash it in for this. Literally, you get rid of said components as quickly as you earn them. But, you know, you've got some pencils in the box, all well and good, but this is what you're really paying £50 for. Hoo-wee! Jesus! I have not seen this many note sheets for any Verb and Write game ever. This is insane. This takes up 2/3 of the box by itself because you need one sheet on one side and one sheet next door to it. So this is effectively my player board. And you want to call this spreadsheet the game? Oh my word, is this spreadsheet the game? This is daunting to a lot of people. You put up pictures of this on Instagram and you get a mix of people going, love this game, it's so amazing. And a bunch of people who are like, what the hell is this? It's like, Jesus. It is very like, what am I supposed to do with this when you look at it? Now, bear in mind, this is definitely probably the most rules heavy roll and write I've ever seen in terms of it, although I don't know, Roman Roll actually would probably have more rules than this, but yeah, this is definitely one of the heavier ones. But that being said, it's a Garphill Games design, which means it's relatively easy to get into. You've got a very useful icon reference on the back. There's about 50 million how to play videos for this game on the internet, literally, although I'm not going to give this a high rating because there's how to play videos out there, but you don't get a free pass for that. But honestly, I learned it from the rulebook to begin with and then watched the video. But the rulebook is pretty straightforward. It starts off with what you have, it does the general concepts, it's got pictorial representations for everything, and it just goes into all the different actions and explains them. A reasonable amount of text as well, and there's definitely a decent amount of pages. I mean, there's like 20 plus pages of actual reading you're going to need to do here. But I didn't find it that difficult to get into. Your first game may go a little bit slow, but other than that, I felt like this was easier to get into than I was expecting. I thought I was going to be here for hours trying to understand this. What you are probably going to freeze up though with is what on earth do you do to do well? Because you have got so many things you can cross off on these sheets, it's ridiculous. And so you look at it and go, where do I even start? Because I need a brick for this, a brick for that, and you know, meeple, purple meeple for this, and blue meeple for that, and black meeple for that, and two of one and one of the other for this. It's like, where do I even start? It is going to be a bit like that for your first few games, but you know, what did I score? Something like 83 in my first game on easy difficulty. It's you know, I picked up pretty fast. Much lower when I played it on normal difficulty though. But you can tailor the difficulty to this, and I will say play it on easy for your first game and then instantly switch to normal, because easy is too easy, honestly. The main way the difficulty pairs up is that the picks are fighting you at various stages, and you have to draw more cards in higher difficulties for them, which means that letting them through could get you negative points. On easy mode, it is too easy to do, whereas on higher difficulties, you do, and the challenge really comes in. There's also a solo campaign that people told me about to like play through, but I was a bit disappointed with it, really. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, certainly if you like the game, there's more content, but all it basically is just 15 scenarios where there's a tiny little rules tweak in each scenario of like, oh, this is not allowed, or you have this extra resource at the start if you do well the previous one. It's like, and then reach a point target. It's no different really from the solo scenarios that you get in the back of the Cascadia rulebook, which is not to say that they're bad, but people were really bigging up like, oh, play a game and then instantly get that, it will make it so much better. And it's like, it's kind of the same game. That was slightly overhyped. And that word is maybe something I do need to hide behind here, because I do think the game is good, but maybe a tiny, tinsy, a little bit overrated. Right, well, calm down, okay? Yes, I know that that's like going to like really insult a lot of people who are low into this game. Now, I had fun playing this, but this is being hyped up, and I think hype is the biggest problem I've had with it, because everyone's been bigging this up like crazy, like ranked 300 on Board Game Geek or somewhere in the 300s, and they're saying like, oh, this is one of my favorite solo games, I've played it like 100 times this year, it's so good, all the choices that I have and everything. It is good, but it does get repetitive quite quickly. Much like, I'm sorry to say, pretty much every single roll and write in existence. Now, I am from the background that has burnt out on this genre, okay? There are some people who adore roll and writes. I burnt out on it like after the third game that came out. Now, it is like the biggest gimmicky cash grab that there is.
Cash grab!
You know, I'm getting sick and tired of all these publishers literally going, oh, you remember this cool game we had? Well, now it's cool game, the dice game. Look at roll and write, yay, easy, give us money. You know, it's like, it takes so little effort to make when they've already got like, the foundation of the game, and then suddenly it's just like more money, and they're usually quite overpriced for what you get. You're basically paying for a notepad. Now, in this, granted, there's a lot more on said notepad, so to be fair, 200 sheets of this stuff, you're playing this solo, you will never run out of sheets in this thing. I don't know how it's physically possible to play this game 200 times, especially when each game is going to take you a good hour or so to play. Yeah, definitely about an hour. This is not a portable solo game, which is another problem with it, because most roll and writes, if I'm going to, I give Harvest Dice props as being the only multiplayer proper verb and write game that works. You know, you care about the other people at the table, because literally 99% of roll and writes you couldn't care less who was with you, but Harvest Dice is an exception. But one thing that I do give credit to the genre for is that they're easy to pick up, they're small, compact, and portable. This isn't any of those. This is not compact, it is not small, it is not easy per se, you've still got to learn a fair bit of rules and get into it, and it's not portable. This is not something I'm suddenly going to take on my travels, you know, in my little light bag on an airplane, on a train or something. Whereas you take something like Ganschlon Clever, for example, you could do that. Or any of the other tiny little roll and writes, I guess. Harvest Dice is a very tiny box, you know, why not take that one? So this is one that you're going to keep for yourself and play in your own house at some point, but for 60 minutes, I'm kind of like thinking I could play something like, you know, my Marvel Champions, my Sentinels game, you know, or a few other like games I might want to pick out for a 60-minute timer. Now, I did enjoy it because you do have a lot of choices. You know, you draw a card, it gives you a bunch of like resources that you can have on it, and you know, it's got a couple of things that pretty much I never pay attention to in my games. We'll get onto that in a minute. But it essentially tells you what resources you're getting around, and then based on what you've crossed off and what other cards you pick out of your own player deck, you get extra resources, and it's basically take as many actions as you like until you get to that, you know, until you finish the round. And then the picks attack based again on drawing from this card deck, and you reflect how much disdain you get from like letting too many of them through, and then rinse repeat for another 5 years. There are some aspects I do think are pretty solid here. I love the fact that you have a player deck where you choose 2 cards at the start of each round, and you have to pick one to get bonus resources from, and one to be a point scoring objective. That's cool, I like that. There's only 12 of them though, there really needed to be more, because there are certain parts of this board that aren't touched in terms of endgame scoring, and I feel like they could have easily just put in some more cards for that. But the other thing with this I find is, again, it's just like every other roll and write. You know, you get into this thing of going, oh, I cross off that, which gives me a yellow meeple, which I'll then use to cross off that, which then gets me a blue meeple, which means I can do that and cross off this. And that's fun the first 2 or 3 times. But again, there's nothing new. I've seen this in it's basically, this is Ganschlon Clever Advanced. That's all it is. It's the exact same game. Ganschlon Clever had the same sort of thing. You had those different segments, and as you crossed off a bit on one, it allowed you to do another bit on another, and it's basically like that. This is exactly the same, just more rules. So it is bigger Ganschlon bigger clever. I don't know how that works. But, you know, which means that you can enjoy it, but for someone like me, I'm just kind of already done with it. I've enjoyed my first few plays, but then it gets repetitive as I find myself doing mostly the same stuff each time. This society board that you've got, it's got 5 different people that you can use, and multiple buildings for each one that you can build. Some of the society board I don't bother to use. The rules faff with dealing with the market and the gladiatorial arena is not worth it for the amount of points you get. Yeah, you can get points from it, but the gladiatorial arena is a bit luck driven, and the market is just, I think, too much of a faff. Whereas I will always pretty much build theatres, because they're really good. I like gardens. The temples are only worth it if you have the point scoring objective for them. Never bother with baths, because frankly, the amount of effort it goes to build them and have the stone available, I kind of want to just try and avoid getting hit in the first place. The courthouse is pretty cool though, with getting meeples and exchanging meeples for meeples, that's handy. Diplomats are great, although I don't like that you have to be like choose which side they apply to, so you might just get lucky or unlucky with those. Scouting is downright broken, I find. I mean, you get the point scoring objective that gives you points for columns filled. It's basically a polyomino mini game. You know, doing scouting is really easy and pretty powerful. And so this does kind of feel like the Trajan of roll and write games. It's like a ton of little different mini games on this sheet that you kind of just chop and choose which ones you want. But I also find that you cross off a good chunk of this board by the time you're done. You know, not necessarily the point scoring tracks, but, you know, every game I've managed to max out my fort without too much trouble, because it's just something that spare meeples go on, and let's face it, you have to build your fort to be able to do a chunk of the other things on that sheet. So, you know, I might as well build the fort. That's not very difficult. The Sippy line, I don't know what the point of that is. Sippy, C-I-P-P-I, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that just seems like a really pointless row. There's only 7 spots on it, and it's just the same as the wall, but less spots. And there's no point scoring objective or anything else that chains off it. So why is it even there? It just seems unnecessary. And then you've got obviously setting up the defenses for your 3 sides that you can be attacked from. That you have to go for. Unless you're on easy mode, do not ignore defense. Because if you do, you're going to lose a ton of points and you might as well kiss the game goodbye. You have got to be prepared. But here's the thing I don't like about the combat. It's randomized. You draw cards from the deck based on difficulty, and they've got arrows at the top dictating where the picks come from. So you might have your defenses quite high in one area and low in another, and then just happen to draw a bunch of cards that all hit your weak area. So you try and spread out, but then you don't get as many bonuses. But even then, you might still have to draw 8 cards from this deck, and all 8 of them point in the middle. So suddenly, not only that you've got not enough defense in the middle, and you just get overwhelmed and a ton of disdain, all by random draw. This can really have a bad effect on your final score, like letting these picks through, and I just think having it randomized with no way to predict, you know, where they're going to attack, that I found was a bit of a weak link, really. But, you know, the whole crux of what I'm getting at here is that it was fine for the first few games I played of it, and as much as this one hasn't really won me over, I will give this respect. If somebody says this is one of their favourite solo games, I can totally see why. If you are a fan of the genre, which bear in mind I'm not a fan of this genre anymore, I am burnt out on this like crazy. I do wish roll and writes would just stop now, or at least give it a rest. Then, you know, if you're not into the genre, I don't think this is going to win you over. Don't suddenly think that this is going to convert you into roll and writes or flipping writes. But if you are a fan of the genre and you want something a little bit more meaty, I have no reason to believe you would not enjoy this. You know, I think this is perfect for anybody who's a fan of the genre and wants meaty stuff. There's a lot of fans of this. If you're planning to just play it solo, again, I think this will work really nicely. Do not get this for multiplayer. It is no point. I mean, you want to get it for a 2-player, maybe, but again, you're not going to be talking to your spouse at all during the game because you're going to be too much thinking about this. You haven't got the mental capacity to do this and pay attention to what other people are doing on their board. And even then, I can't really influence what you do on your board, apart from potentially the transfer of 1 meeple, maybe, if I'm going for trading. It's so little multiplayer interaction, it's just not worth it for anything but the 1 player. But it is well produced, but £50 I still think is a high price tag. Yes, you're getting 200 sheets of high quality goodness, but I don't think you're necessarily getting £50 worth of fun, particularly if you're not necessarily a roll and write fan. So, as I say, I am very glad that I've tried this now. I think it's a solid roll and write game if you're a fan of the genre, but I think it just gets repetitive, just like all the other ones. I enjoyed my first few plays of it, and then I just noticed, oh, there's the same thing again, same thing, cross this, cross that, You spend more of your time just like putting the meeples back and taking them back again, rather than actually thinking in your head, maybe I should just like not bother with the wooden pieces and just remember what I've got. It does get a little bit annoying having to constantly grab these wooden pieces all the time, but as I say, there's a lot of options that you have. Some I think are worse than others, but you know, I'm sure people will debate that for ages. But the game it's decent. But for me, it's kind of a 6 out of 10. It's a 6 out of 10. I find it above average. I find it okay, and I will certainly give it this. It's one of the better roll and writes flipping writes I've played. Harvest Dice is still my number 1. I think that does it perfect. Small, compact, easy, cute theme, and I care about the other players. That one is just near perfect for like a tenner that you can buy it for. Shame I haven't still got my copy. But this one I still think is one of the better in the genre I have played. I'd rather play this than Ganschel and Clever. I'd rather play this than pretty much any of the other flipping rights that have come, or roll and rights that have come as spin-offs of other bigger games. Certainly on that front. This one I totally get. And I do recommend it for fans of the genre who want a bit of extra meat. So try not to kill me too much.
You're going to burn in a very special level of hell.
Ooh, so that's it for me on this bumper compilation video. Hopefully it wasn't too long, although I've got to edit it and find out. But until next time, I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. And if you like what you see, please remember to like the video, comment on any of the games that I've talked about, and consider subscribing to it. It would mean the world to me. But also, you can check out the Patreon campaign if you want to help this channel a little bit further. And until next time, you can check out recent videos that I have done, including my full review of Sentinels the Multiverse, Definitive Edition, which may or may not still have a giveaway going at this point if you can get in before the end of March. But also you might want to check out the top 10 Euro solo games that I did with Mark Dainty, which is another fun live stream list to look at. So take care, and remember as always, it's only a game. Bye for now.